Okay, so we've gone through circle map, flow map. We're in our sloppy copy. We've already talked about our opening and our first event. And now we're going to write about our second event. And we're going to take that information from our thinking map, which were our main ideas here with our second event. And we are going to plug it into our narrative. Well, I've run out of room on my page, so I want to just turn the page and start a new one. When I'm writing a rough draft, I don't like to write on the back, because that way I can have someone proofread half of my paper for me, and I can have someone proofread, a different person proofread the other half. If you write on the back, then you can't split it up like that. So I am going to talk about our conflict. So we left off with Elmo talking to Paisley and that she didn't know what to say. Okay, that's telling our reader that she was very surprised, as anyone would be, if a toy came to life. So I need to get to the part where they're arguing. Elmo has already said, let's play to Paisley. And maybe I want to say something like, it takes a few minutes for Paisley to realize that it's Elmo talking to her. She finally gives Elmo a great big hug. Now I brought that into my story because I hadn't talked about it yet, and I want to make sure that I get that information in there. And now that I'm happy with the details I've included in my sloppy copy, I'm gonna now talk about my conflict and what it's about. Okay. As you can imagine, Elmo's probably really hungry. Because he just woke up and just came to life. Well, Paisley isn't hungry. No, I know I spelled that wrong, so I'm gonna fix that later. So she here I'm adding some more dialogue. She says, let's just go out and play. We can eat later. This doesn't make Elmo very happy. So he starts to cry. Paisley had already ran outside, so he feels all alone. Okay, so now I'm going to pause and I'm going to come back to my second event, and I am going to look at my ideas to see what's going on, if I've covered my conflict. So I didn't talk about not sharing yet. I might talk about that later. But I have talked about a snack in a little bit different way, and that's okay. You can change your story. It's your narrative. However you want to write it is however you want to write it. You don't have to include everything, but you do want to be complete and paint a nice picture for your reader about what you had in mind. Now, as I'm looking here, I also notice I spelled Paisley's name wrong up here, so I want to circle that to fix later. I don't want to take the time to do it right now. Okay, so I've talked about conflict. I've included how he feels, crying, running. I've got a little action in here. And now we need to fix this conflict before we move on to our final event. So Elmo decides he better look for Paisley. And find out, or find some food. He starts yelling, Paisley. Now I want to show great emotion here, so I'm putting her name in all capital letters with an exclamation mark. This finally gets her attention, and she races back inside to find out what's going on. Okay, so I think I'm gonna solve my problem right now, because I have my characters going back to meet each other, right? Paisley's going back to see what's going on with Elmo. So I can say, once she realizes how hungry he is, and sees his tears, she immediately and I know that's spelled wrong, but I'll fix it later, so I'm just circling it, gets him some food so they can play. All right. Afterwards. Okay. So this is my second event. I'm gonna go back, double check I've talked about all of this so it makes sense. We've got the argument. I decided only to deal with the snack, and I'm solving the conflict with Paisley getting Elmo some food. So I can take, whoops, sorry you couldn't read that all. I apologize. So here's where he starts yelling. Paisley gets her attention. She comes back in. So I can finally now match my orange color. That's my second event with this information. And notice, I started a new event, so I started a new paragraph here. even though I'm still referring to my previous event at the top, I still get into the conflict afterwards. I like the way that it flows in that way. So think about how you're going to transition from one event to the next and try to figure out how to make it make the most sense that you can. Look at your opening lines notes that we talked about already. If you can't find them in your notes, then you can always Google 4th grade opening phrases for paragraphs for a narrative. Okay, it's time for you to write about your second event. You can pause or go back through this video if you want for inspiration.